In this video, we're gonna see components in Sketchup, and in particular, we're gonna talk about two types of components, which are the live components and dynamic components. Now, this is a scene here where I have used some live components and some dynamic components. You can also combine the two features. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start clean, and I want to change everything here. Now, just to understand what a dynamic component is that you can change its parameter directly from a panel, so inserting, for example, the height or the length without scaling, or you can rotate an object without actually use the rotate tool, but rotating or change materials and so on. So I want to delete everything here and start from the beginning with you. Now let's start. The first thing I want to start with is the component. Now, what is a component? It's basically a group which maintain some data, some, let's say, metadata inside the object itself. And this is similar to what we find in BIM technology, so in architecture programs like Revit. Now, you can use the 3D warehouse to get your components or your objects. So if you search for something here, let's type, for example, wall. So I will show you one of the models that I've used. You can see you have many results here. Now, products are actual products that you find in real life. So these are models, 3D models based on products, on real products. Models, you will find many more things here because these are actually made by users like you. So you can actually create a component and upload it into the 3D warehouse as well. Now, if you go in the filters here in the left side, you can see there are two switches. One is live components and one is dynamic components. Now, these are similar, but they have some differences. So you can see that the wall that I've used is in the live component switch. So let's upload this one here. So I will click here and say, okay, configure. Now, you will find all the infos here, the data that the models brings with him. And if you click on configure, you can actually set some parameters, some properties before actually uploading into the scene. So you will have this viewer here where you can orbit like that, and you can pan and zoom and so on, and you can change it. So you can change the wall length, the wall height, horizontal arrays, vertical arrays, and wall depth, seed, and so on. And when you finish, you can download, and this is gonna bring it into your scene. Now, this is again a live component, but you can turn a live component into a dynamic component. It's pretty easy. You just have to add a dynamic parameter, a dynamic property. That's all. You need to do that step, and I will show you that later. Now, this is a live component. Let's add a dynamic component, same thing. So we get into the 3D warehouse. Let's say I want to search for a chair, and again, advanced, and I will turn on the dynamic component. Okay, now let's bring this nice director chair here. Say yes, and I would bring it here. Oh, too low. So let me place that again. Now, each time you're gonna bring a component into your scene, you can use the component window. So if you go to Window, Default, and Components, you can access the component window here, and you can search for the components that you have added. So you can search your components or components that are available here in these folders, and also in the model. So the last one, it didn't save this chair, so I'm gonna bring it again inside. There you go. Well, this is a little bit higher, but it's okay. Now, when you have a dynamic component, you're gonna see this little green icon. And so these are two different types of models. One is dynamic, one is live. So when I double click on the live component, it's gonna open up again the live component parameters. So the ones that I saw before in the 3D warehouse are also available directly inside the scene. So this is pretty handy because I can make up my mind, change some information here, and as I change the information, I change the model. So because information can be a color, information can be height, weight, and so on. Also product, producer, and whatever. Now this is similar to the, again, BIM logic, BIM, like Revit, and this means building information modeling. So it means that you are actually modeling through information and data more than 3D or 2D. So it's a more complex way to work in architecture and engineering, and I think it's going to be the standard in the future. So all these software also, like Sketchup, are kind of following this trend. Okay, and so this is, well, you can also change here the color, for example. I can change the colors. I'm gonna change it directly right there. Okay, now let's close this, and I want to do the same thing with the dynamic component. Double click, and you can see that it doesn't open any panel. It's just going inside and inside all these groups and subgroups inside my actual component. So component is kind of a group basically, but when you do this live component, it's gonna send you, when you double click in the panel, so you need to explode this to get into these triangles and modify that more accurately. But with this dynamic here, I can actually open up other panels. So if you go to window, the two panels are component options. Let's bring this here, and component attributes. Now attributes, again, it's another way to call the parameters. So this is a parametric object. It's like a family in Revit. Objects like these are called families in BIM software or similar software. So you can see I can check here all the information again, and it has some position, and also I can work here on the seat, on the legs. I can add attributes, I can customize this a lot. Now the only attribute I have here at the moment is the height. So let's say I want to set this, I want to change this from 0 to 1 and say apply. Yeah, okay, this is not so fancy. It's just change the position. It's not so nice. Well, it's not so useful basically, but this is made probably by another user, so it's not professional. Now if we want to check here in the components that we see in this folder, component sampler, we can check other components made by I think the Sketchup team or something like that. So if I bring this, for example, this frame floor, there you go. Okay, now you can see it has many more components. For example, it has the length. So let's set this to 10 meters, 10 meters. I can adjust this, joist size, the spacing, and spacing between runners. I can basically customize all the most important parts of this model. So I'm creating, this is a floor, a framing for a floor. Okay, now, so some components are actually more interesting than others. It depends on who designed that particular component. Okay, now if I want, I can also customize a component. So for example, if I want to customize this one, I want to add another attribute or another parameter, I can use the component attribute. And I'm gonna work in the overall component, the overall group, which is director share tool. So I'm gonna click add attribute, and you can see you have many attributes already there, or you can create your own, but in this case I'm gonna use a very simple one just to make the example. So I'm gonna use this one, which is rotation on Z-axis, and right now it's set as a default to 0, and it's okay, but I want to add more options. So I click here in details, and I can see here I have drop down menu, and I can decide if people can modify this as a text box like this, or if I want to give a defined set of options. So I can select here from a list. And let's add some options. So the first option will be 0, which is the default. And then let's add, for example, 45. These are degrees, and 90, and let's say 180, and so on. You can go on and continue to add as many options as you want. Let's say apply. Okay, now another attribute appear here in the component options. So if I click here now, I can decide to change this rotation by applying. So without even using the move or rotate or scale tool, I can actually create more options, more parameters, more attributes. You can call this anything you want. And this is so easy. Now, when you have a standard object, for example, I can create here a simple box. Now I can turn this into a component. I can go to edit and say make a component, and you can give all the information here, but you can also then change this to a dynamic component. It's pretty simple. Just add an attribute here, and this will turn any object into a dynamic component. You can also create a dynamic component using a live component just by clicking on. Well, let's continue to add the rotation. There you go. So you can see. Okay, let's do as a text box here now to change. Okay, you can see I have the rotation right here. Same thing here. So I'm gonna add rotation and visible as a text box. And there you go. Now these are all dynamic components. Let's set 70, for example. And there you go, and apply. And here I want to set 10 and apply. Okay, you can see in the components now everything is dynamic components. So this is basically the difference between a standard component, a live component, and a dynamic component. And this is really the, let's say, the start of the road. There are a lot of things to learn, a lot of attributes here you can set, but this is gonna be it for this video.